to good friends, the ones we hold dear, the ones who will tell us what we need to hear, the ones who love us, right or wrong, and to all those good friends that give you this song.
Well, hello, good friends, and welcome back to The Last Walk, Remember When, with your host, Ron Baumbach. And today we're going back in time to a special fun time. So get up, get off your easy chair, walk over to your fridge, open up that icebox, reach deep inside, take out a Yoo-hoo, pop it open, pour out that chocolatey, syrupy liquid into your nice tall glass, reach up into your cupboard, take out a sleeve of Oreo cookies, open them up, lay them on the table, walk back to your chair, turn on your lava lamp, close your eyes, get ready, it's storytelling time. The Last Walk is back.
Here's to good friends, the ones we hold dear, the ones who will tell us what we need to hear, the ones who love us, right or wrong, and to all those good friends that give you this song.
The world has gone topsy-turvy in the last few months due to coronavirus, COVID-19. Who knows where this whole thing came from? We just can't wait for it to end. And I thought back to a time about over 50 years ago when I stayed 6 months in bed. And I thought, geez, if I could do 6 months in bed, I could hopefully spend 3-4 months in the house. And this time I'm with my wife, so it's a lot better than it was years ago when I was solitary with some roommates, 25 different roommates, in fact, over the course of 6 months in the hospital. But life goes on. You make lemonade out of lemons, and you make the best of things. So I thought I'd go back to my story of a kid back in the hospital with the story of my back. Enjoy this journey back in time to 1964-65.
When the values go up, 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 and the prices go down, 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 Robert Hall this season will show you the reason. Low overhead, low overhead.
Well, friends, when you hear that jingle, does it bring back memories to you? Does it tickle your mind and make you think back to a different time? When I think of Robert Hall, I have my own memory. In my book, I called it Robert Hall and My Back. It was a Holy Thursday evening, March 26, 1964. After attending our Last Supper services on Holy Thursday at church, my mom, my dad, and I decided to take a ride to Robert Hall, a rather famous clothing store back then, so I could get a brand new suit for Easter. Now, surprisingly, two things stood out about that event. First of all, it's incredible to think that I could buy a suit on a Thursday, not to mention Holy Thursday in 1964, and have it back tailored and finished for time for Easter Sunday Mass. And the second thing was, why was I getting a new suit? See, I was the third of 3 boys, with my sister coming years later. So I basically lived in a land of what we called hand-me-downs. I figured I must have needed a new suit for a new jacket for some occasion coming up, or Mom and Dad figured I was about due to get my own new digs after having followed the footsteps and the clothing of my 2 older brothers for many years. We had to wear a jacket and tie to high school, and my brother Jerry and Dick were for the most part both out of the house, in college and in the Army. So I guess they figured Ronald needs some adult attire. So what followed that evening had the most profound impact on my life. And now, after a year of doing this radio show, I thought maybe it's about time I share with what made me write the book, what made me think back to the people that basically helped mold a lot of what I've done in my life. An interesting period of what transpired in 1964 and 65. Now, what followed that evening had the most profound impact on my life, with the only exception being marriage, parenthood, and being a proud papa. As I stood in the wooden block for his salesman, tailor, fellow, whatever he was, to measure me, he kept telling me to stand up straight. He repeated this over and over to me. He kept saying every time, "You're not standing up straight. Stand up straight, son." He finally went over to my parents, and he said, "I'm concerned. Something's wrong with your son. He's not standing up straight." They went over to me and said, "Ronald, stand up straight." I said, "I'm standing up straight. I'm doing the best I can." And the guy said, "Something's wrong." I looked at myself in the mirror. It seemed okay. You know, that big mirror in the store that they have when you're on that block. My mom and dad, who had seen me every day for my then 14 years, seemed very confused. But the salesman persisted. He showed them how my back was severely going to one side, and my head and neck not even rest evenly on my shoulders. This went on and on for what seemed like an eternity. I just wanted to get myself out of that store, get in the car and go home, away from this freak. I did not need that. Let's get a jacket somewhere else. I don't need this guy doing this stuff to me. But Mom and Dad finally promised the salesman, this guy, that they would indeed get me checked out, go to a doctor, and we bought the jacket. And a lot of alterations. Now the following week, Easter week, we went to our old family doctor, whom my brother Jerry affectionately called Dr. Pain in the Ankle. Dr. Panabianco, his real name was. His office was in Old Town of Corona. He was a childhood friend of Dad. They played stickball together on 42nd Avenue in Corona, Queens. He was the one who delivered all the babies that Mom had, Dick, Jerry, myself, and Debbie. He was the good doctor. He was the most trusted family member we had who was a medical expert. No, the good doctor had me do all sorts of exercises for him. Bend over, stand this way, stand that way, forward, backward, all these different things. And he finally figured there was something wrong with my foot. I had something called spurs in the bottom of my feet, which could cause pain, and perhaps that made me stand somewhat crooked. So he recommended we go see a specialist. Now, this diagnosis did make a lot of sense, since as a youngster, I was often called pigeon-toed. I never knew what that meant. I never seen a pigeon walk human-toed, but I was called pigeon-toed. My feet turned in. And to correct that, I was told to pick up marbles with my toes. Has anyone ever done that? You take a bag of marbles and you put them down the floor, use your toes to pick them up. That was supposed to make me walk better. I don't know if I can still do that, though, to this day. My right foot is really good, but far more agile than my left foot. Try it. It's a nice image you have there, right? Anyway, my recollection was that the good Dr. Panabianco wasn't too concerned about my back, more worried about my feet and these spurs. Then again, Mom and Dad may have shielded me from any negative news he was saying, because back then, you never told the kids bad news. It was always like everything was doing wonderful and great, and I was not involved in what the issue was at all. I went back and I played ball. But he did suggest we go to see a specialist, as I mentioned, an orthopedic specialist. Now, Mom and Dad found a good Dr. Greiner, who was in Williston Park, Long Island, New York, our hometown, who had done some work on my brother years earlier. The doctor was local and a really, really cool guy. I really enjoyed my visits to this doctor. His initial request was for me to have a number of x-rays taken from all different angles. Fittingly, we had to go to a technician where Dad's insurance plan would be covered. But somehow the technician misread the prescription. And instead of taking some 6 x-rays, he took about 30. When this came back to Dr. Greiner, he flipped out on the phone with these people, went crazy about all the x-rays they took. They had more and more pictures of whatever they needed about me. I thought I had a bunch of really cool pictures. I asked for an album. Anyway, during my examination, I remembered him having me bend over and try to touch my toes. He would then put pen marks all over my back. I was told to stand up straight. He then called Mom and Dad in the room and showed them the x-rays. He pointed out areas on the x-rays that could have been cause for concern. And they all looked really, really upset. But then, he said, he ruled it out. I remembered his exact words. "We were lucky on this one. We missed a bullet. Or else we all would be here crying." He then showed my parents my back with the pen marks and demonstrated how my spine was becoming an S. I was like Superman, but more like an S than in the body of a Superman. The diagnosis was curvature of the spine, now commonly called scoliosis. Now, teenagers in the current day are tested for this, but back in the 60s, no one knew what scoliosis was. We never heard of the word, and obviously no one got tested for it. We were told it was idiopathic, which meant the cause, no one knew what caused it, and basically was predominantly found in females by a margin of 4-1. I was sort of like the oddball who was lucky enough to get this scoliosis idiopathic thing. And I still thought they're all freaking nuts. I felt great, no problem. I didn't know I had any kind of curvature. I just wanted to play ball and be the center fielder for the Mets or Yankees. That's all I cared to do. Now, my initial curvature was called 57 degrees off. And I'm thinking 57 degrees, 360, that's not bad. They said, it's not good. It was measured by a combination of both the upper and lower back. He wrote a prescription for a back brace, which had to be molded to my body. I was told to wear it all the time. This was like the spring and summer of 64. I had to wear this thing all the time except when I went to bed. The cross stitch in the front was like a girdle, had to be tightened to keep me straight. And my brother Jerry was the absolute best at this. He could pull this thing so tight, I was the thinnest, most in-shape person ever walked into any room. He had this thing like, boom, it was straight and rigid. He would make it so tight, I couldn't escape. I felt like Houdini trying to get out of this thing. The only problem was I would escape and basically didn't listen to the doctor's advice. I would still play baseball with my friends, football, basketball, etc. I would take it off, sneak it off, and go play games. No one knew it. And I recall one summer day, we had a really important baseball game in which we, the kids from our block, Houston Avenue, were challenged by a bunch of kids from a neighboring block in Mineola. And we had to beat them. We knew we were better, and we had to beat them. Now, back then, I was considered somewhat of a home run threat, and my presence was requested to be at the game. I kept hemming and hawing whether I should play or not, and I couldn't tell my mom and dad even about the game at all. You kidding me? There's no way I could tell them. But my team persisted. They didn't know I had a problem with my back. The team persisted. Come on, Ron, play. They didn't know my condition at all. The norm for the day back then was to keep family medical issues quiet. No one knew someone had a medical problem. It was all, shh, don't tell them. I think the only person who knew about my area, my medical thing, was Mrs. Doyle next door and probably Mr. Renan, my godmother across the street. But they were kept probably in the secret silence of the world, that no one could share what was going on. So I played the game without the brace. But when I got home, my mom and dad found out, and was I in trouble. I would wear the brace more often. I promised I would wear it. I also wore it to play with my daily afternoon games with my next-door neighbor and one of my best friends back then, Alan. We would go after school and play in our driveways or in the corner, bending over for ground balls. Twice I hear a crack. It meant the brace broke. Once while playing stickball, I collided with another kid in the ground as he ran to first base. We both fell to the ground. My brother Jerry ran over, almost blew my cover. As he picked me up, he said, "Is your back okay?" And everyone looked around and said, "Back? What's wrong with Ron's back?" And no one even knew I had this brace on. There were a lot of questions back then, but Jerry and I just shrugged it off, and we did create somewhat of a buzz. And the game went on. Now in high school, the principal and teachers knew about my issue with my brace and my back. And the good thing was I was excused from gym, which stunk. That's the one class I really enjoyed to go to. But they said you can't go there. I missed bombardment, war, basketball, punchball, all those things we could do. Instead, I was sent to the library. I was sent to the library. Do you hear what I said? Sent to the library to read more and study more. All my friends are out there playing. The one time I wanted to go out and have fun, and I'm in the library studying. Now, throughout the course of that period, I misled Mom, Dad, my doctor, and more importantly, myself, because I would not